My name is Scott Tillman. I worked for the Department of Human Services. I started working there in 2007, became the manager of the Digital Forensics Lab in 2010. My job there was to investigate primarily employee misconduct, especially as it resolved to digital technology, computers, cell phones, servers, emails. As the daycare program grew, my duties expanded, and I was assigned to go out with law enforcement officers, both FBI, Health and Human Services, BCA, local law enforcement, and a team of investigators embedded within DHS to execute search warrants at some of the businesses that were allegedly committing some fraud. If I could mention some of the things that I worked on, they were daycare frauds based out of Department of Human Services, and they were significant. They were overwhelming. The dollar amounts were upwards of 15 million. I was overwhelmed with the data that I was receiving. I was overwhelmed with what I was seeing on the computers and on their cell phones. I tracked individuals overseas using their phone to compounds in the desert, in countries that are not friendly to the United States, where they would spend months over there while they were operating their DHS daycare business. My other duties include Medicaid fraud, specifically in the personal care attendant fraud. The dollar amounts and the scope, the size of that far outweigh daycare. I've had investigators tell me it's closer to 70–80% fraud rate. And those investigators are prohibited from disclosing the data to you that they have because of data privacy laws. They go to work every day and they agonize over what they see on those computers, what they do, what they see in the bank search warrants that they run, where that money goes, where it comes from. Some of those banks, when they were doing the banks, when they were floating money through the banks, it would be deposited at 3 in the morning, and the owner of the account would quickly transfer it from one account to the next, second after second, and go through 50 different bank accounts, which is a form of money laundering. The data we were seeing on the phones was especially alarming. Wire transfers, pictures in foreign countries. I was concerned. I was deeply concerned. And not only because of what I saw, but because of what law enforcement was telling me. I worked very closely with I was a law enforcement officer. I had a lot of friends in law enforcement. And we worked together, everywhere from Health and Human Services to FBI to local law enforcement to county sheriffs to state police. We all worked as a team. And some of the things they were telling me and some of the investigations they were working on, I had a hard time sleeping at night. And I would encourage you, talk to some of those people. They'll talk to you. You may have to do it privately, off the record. But what they would reveal to you is, I think it has a national security implication. I really do. And so do they. I worked on a lot of Medicaid fraud, and that the dollar amount of fraud, Medicaid fraud, particularly in personal care attendant fraud, way exceeds the daycare fraud. But most of that money is going to extravagant lifestyles, drugs, large houses, things of that nature. But there's no controls. Or I should say the controls are inadequate. They're not enforced. There's few checks and balances. When we did the Lillian Richardson case, that was in the news. She was on probation in Arkansas for a felony Medicaid fraud conviction. And she was running 50 different shell companies. By shell company, I mean a fraudulent, non-existent company up here in Minnesota, using her family members to extort, to use fraudulent means to extract money from the DHS Medicaid program. And that's in the newspaper. You can look at that. When we stopped counting the loss, it was 18 million. I know it was higher than that. A week after she was released from jail, I was told she was up and running again and started the same businesses and was collecting money from DHS because the controls, the checks and balances prevented them from shutting her down again. Barb Curran, look in the news. She's in Shakopee prison. She ran a $5 million organized crime ring from her prison cell using a state computer. I asked the state agency if I could have that computer so I could track the money, and they would not give me that computer. There was a way to find that money to get that $5 million back, but we never got that money back because we don't know where it went. Was it possible to find out? Absolutely, but I was prevented. I saw the internal controls. I saw the Office of Inspector General, which was run and operated by DHS. And I saw the controls, or lack of controls, the checks and balances for these programs. And I liken it to a police officer who commits a crime and then turns around and tells us, well, I'll investigate myself and tell you what I find. If you really want to have objectivity and independence and accuracy and full disclosure and transparency, you really might want to consider taking the investigative component away from the entity that controls and manages it and make them independent. I can't emphasize that strongly enough, that you are not being told everything. I'm just going to close with saying one thing. This is not a Minnesota problem. It started in Minnesota, but we found an individual in our investigation who was teaching and training other states to do this, and it's spreading out. It's in Seattle, New Jersey, New York, Florida, Georgia. It's everywhere.